Neo Soul, a genre of music that began and started to take shape in the 1990s and lasted for a short-lived time up until the 2000s. Today here on the Swag and Jazzy channel, we're going to talk about Neo Soul, its origins, and its downfall here on the Swag and Jazzy channel. But before we get into the meat of the video, I want to give a shout out and some praise to a fine artist that we just recently lost, who was in the neo soul genre, Mr. D'Angelo, who just recently passed away. He was a phenomenal songwriter, musician, performer. Thank God I got a chance to see him in person when he came to Los Angeles some years ago. And he has just recently left us, made his transition. And I just want to say, rest in peace, my brother. But before we get into the reasons why neo soul was so short-lived in the mainstream, we need to get into the emergence of the genre itself, how it came about, and what it is. So by the time when the 1990s rolled around, the decade of the 90s, the genre of soul music had pretty much gone out of style. It had gone out of style at the end of the 1970s. However, during the 60s and the 70s, something phenomenal was taking place. It was the birth of future neo soul artists that was happening. Birth meaning being born, coming into the world. Most of the neo soul artists that emerged in the 90s and the early 2000s were children and babies of the 70s, for they had grown up partly and had been exposed to the soul music genre before it went out of style from the mainstream. But it was those same children, the Generation Xers, who had been exposed to soul music and had already absorbed and had ingrained it into themselves. They already absorbed the soul music aesthetic from being raised in the 70s and had then brought it forward into the 90s into their own music creations when they became adults. So in the 1990s, gangster rap was starting to emerge out of its dark, shadowy underground world, and it was starting to emerge into the mainstream in the 90s. Before then, it was pretty much underground music in the 80s, and you just kind of knew by word of mouth where to go and get it. However, not everybody was a big fan of gangster rap. Everybody didn't come from the same environment. Not everybody appreciated a bunch of guys making up raps and calling women, degrading women as bitches and hoes, promoting violence to harm one another, and to always paint a not so hopeful situation in their lyrics. In other words, their lyrics are very, very dark. So a lot of people wasn't really gravitating to that. And because of that, neo soul had made its way into the 1990s. And thank God it did, because it provided an alternative choice for those who wanted to experience stories in song that most people could relate to, no matter what race or social economic level one may be at. It was constructive music that brought folks together in a positive way. So now you know of neo soul's emergence and the seeds of it coming into fruition to be. But what is neo soul? Yes, we know that it's carrying forward that 70s aesthetic feeling of soul and music. But what are the elements that makes it what it is or what it was back in the 90s as compared to the 1970s soul music? Well, to put it simply without making things too complicated, the core ingredients that make up neo soul is the mixture of spoken word poetry, jazz, and soul. The singing in neo soul is best described as a cross between speech and singing. Oh, and by the way, you see that little thing that's spinning there that says subscribe? Make sure that you look for the subscribe button here on this video and hit that button. I would greatly appreciate it. Another factor that played in helping the neo soul genre to form was the demands of the artist to play with a real band, which was that soul aesthetic that these artists were born into and raised upon. You see, in the 90s, a lot of R&B and hip hop artists were starting to utilize the newly available technology, the pre-programmable computer technology to make music. I call it making a music product as to making music, but I digress. But for the neo soul artists, they wanted to maintain that organic flavor of soul throughout their music. So they wanted real instruments being played by real human beings, not computers and robots. And because of the ingredients that make up neo soul, it started gaining ground and notoriety. Local radio stations across various cities were catching on and was promoting the wave of these new neo soul artists. The sign that was given that neo soul had arrived onto the mainstream of music was in 1998 during the Grammys, when Erykah Badu, being the first one to take home an award in that genre, and then that same year Lauryn Hill had taken home 5 Grammys. This solidified that neo soul genre was a new wave of music. And who was considered the pioneer of the neo soul movement, D'Angelo, had 4 Grammy wins and 14 nominations in 2001. After the 90s, more and more neo soul artists came about onto the scene, and for me this was a welcoming addition to mainstream music, because gangster rap at the time was becoming more and more solidified in the mainstream, but it seemed to have become more negatively influential upon society, in my opinion. And it's my video is my opinion. And by the way, make sure you hit that subscribe button where that little green sign is telling you to do that. Make sure you follow instructions on that green button there. Anyway, although it was apparent in the 2000s that neo soul had not only arrived and gained its ground in the mainstream music, but also what was occurring was an underlining dismantling of it at the same time, which led to the decline of neo soul that no one saw coming. And a sad decline it was for the decline of neo soul that nobody saw coming. And it wasn't the genre nor the artist that made up the genre itself that was at fault for the decline of it. No. Decline of neo soul was a succession of events, all stemming from, you guessed it, the music business. Let me put it in a nutshell before I go into detail. It's like having a recipe that you cook and everybody likes eating it. Somebody takes that recipe, changes it by instilling substitutions, but expect the same replica of that same exact taste as the original recipe would yield, minus the original ingredients and methods for preparing a dish. Make it make sense, y'all. One of several factors that led to the decline of the neo-soul genre was the record companies' label executives putting pressure on the neo-soul artists that were assigned to their labels to produce more mainstream radio-friendly hits, and thereby trying to get the neo-soul artists to move away from their authentic, complex sound that made them popular in the first place. Mainstream radio-friendly hits at that time, I don't know what that meant back at that time, because they were doing quite well, if you ask me. So in other words, they were trying to get the neo-soul artists to conform to what the majority of radio fans were listening to and gravitating towards. So the label executives pushed for neo-soul artists to shift their sound. Basically comes down to getting more bang for your buck. In other words, make more money, have less people to pay. Record executives saw this formula with the rap artists, who were usually solo artists, while at the same time becoming successful, without the need of a live band. And because of the rise of faster machine-produced music, such as through auto-tunes or drum machines or whatever else that was out at the time, record executives saw that this meant that the neo-soul artist can be just as successful as a rap artist and make more money, not only for the artists themselves, but for the record executives, because, the record executives are going to think about themselves, the bottom line. They felt that if they can get the neo-soul to gravitate to this new technology, as opposed to having maybe a 6 or 7-piece band on stage, they feel that it would be more efficient in making more music and be more cost effective. So with the record executives trying to steer neo-soul artists away from their authentic sound, which is live performances with real human beings playing real instruments, and the record executives trying to push neo-soul artists to use more machine programmable ways of making music, the neo-soul artists resisted and felt constrained by the label's desire to explore different sounds for them. And so with this was another factor that led to the decline of neo-soul. The artists just refused to break away from their artistic integrity. So another factor that played into the decline of the neo-soul genre was the market became oversaturated with the success of the previous neo artists that have won Grammys and had successful selling bids with their music. A lot of other artists try to jump on the bandwagon who are not truly neo-soul, but they try to copy the sound, if you will. And of course, the powers in business that be would just put them all in a box and could just call it neo-soul. So the market became oversaturated with a lot of neo-soul artists that weren't neo-soul. And so the sound and stuff started to becoming kind of replicated, if you will. The tone became replicated. And so it became that a new development, a new gimmick that came about with the music business, and they labeled it as alternative R&B. And that kind of took over where neo-soul ended. Well, this will conclude the end of the video. I thank you for watching it. And please make sure you share this video and give this video a like. But the main thing, I want you to show your appreciation by hitting that subscribe button. If you hit that little red subscribe button, it will do me such a big favor. And it will always keep me motivated to make videos such as this, which I enjoy doing because I love the research part of it, and to bring it forth to you. So peace and blessings to you, and may you be well in your days to come.